Your executive team might underperform, and you wonder why. When you saw our last episode, you saw us already talking about the leadership in the age of AI. The question now is why, even with AI, your brilliant executive team might underperform. And we have an expert with us here today, backed by popular demand. Hello and welcome back, Marc Inzelstein.
Niels, thanks again for having me. Always love these conversations with you.
Thank you very much for taking the time again. So let's say you have an executive team, and often that means you have perfectly educated people who often come from prestigious organizations who have
Yes.
years, not seldomly decades of experience within the industry. They have a network, they know the people, they know the processes, they know organizations, they know best practices, and they know all the industry standards. How
Yes.
on earth, when you hire like that, can you be anywhere near underperforming when you hire these people? Because let's face it, they're also on a reasonably high payroll.
Yes. Yes. It's a brilliant question, Niels. And it happens a lot, far too often, unfortunately. So I would say that what we often see is that individual excellence is not converted into collective coherence. That's the gigantic gap. And let me explain what I mean by coherence.
Yes,
Coherence
tell
is
me.
when the different parts work well within the whole, right? That's really what we're looking for is coherence. And organizations, even the best, have a massive gap in coherence. Why does that happen? Because like you said, you have the most educated people, often terrific people, nice people, but there's a massive trust gap on all teams, and sometimes more so than anywhere else on the executive team because there's so much at stake. So when people get into the room and sitting around the executive team table, there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of unspoken things. People are looking at how they protect their own departments, their own functions, rather than looking at how can I be part of leading the whole. If you're not coming from the whole, if you're not functioning from a place of coherence, you are definitely going to underperform. There's no question. So the potential collective intelligence that is available is not tapped into. So we've got functions sitting around a table, a committee, but it's not a team.
Yeah, excellent. And I this is now almost perfect here. I of course asked people before why their executive teams underperform, and they think, and an answer which I received by more than half of everyone I asked, they said, "Look, our executive teams, they are all temporary soldiers. They come into the organization, they have their mission, and what many people who work for them think they have in mind." They think, what's my next step after this? So I have
Yes.
here 2 to 4 years. I will achieve a certain implementation, a new CRM system or whatever it might be, get my bonus, moving on from here. So
Yes.
when people now think that from a certain level of career, anyone in there is not in for the long run, they are all in for the short run, according to many people who I ask. How should I ever get anywhere near trust when people say, look, you're just here for the next bigger bonus and then you move on anyway, and probably everything falls apart 2 years later, but that's not your problem, that's our problem then. How to create trust when the picture is conveyed that many people think no one is here for the long run anymore?
That's such a brilliant question. And there's a very big truth, unfortunately. This is the onus that goes to the CEO, right? This is the CEO's job. He or she needs to create an environment where people want to be part of it for the long term and not because of the money. Obviously, these executives are brilliant. They're highly experimented. They are very well paid. But if they're only taking the job for the money, it's the wrong reason. And you don't want
Mm,
those people. You want people that are in it for the mission and purpose of the organization. They're there to serve. They're there to lead other people, to elevate the hundreds or thousands of people or tens of thousands of people that they may be leading. And it's the onus is on the CEO to create an environment that brings out the best in those people. What does that mean? Define a shared purpose. Why are we all here? Beyond making money, beyond our stock price, what are we here to serve in this world? Because every human being, even those that don't know it yet, need a purpose to be at their best. The
mm.
second thing is, how do I take the politics out of the room? How do we surface the issues that are there but are not said, they're not spoken openly, creating psychological safety? When a human, and I can tell you, I've been in this work a long time, most of the people, the vast majority of the people I've met and worked with want that. They don't believe the others want it around the table, but they do.
Mm-hmm.
So the safety that and the climate had to be created by the CEO, but the CEO needs to know how to do that. It's not easy. Everyone can learn it, but this is where I think coaching and leadership experts, advisors come in to help a CEO create the climate, because it's hard to do alone. It's a very, very
Yeah.
difficult job, a very lonely job to be a CEO, but that's the job of the CEO, to make people want to work there for the purpose and not just for the money.
Excellent point here. And of course, I have to tap into one other aspect here. We probably heard of that. We had one Swiss bank that went under and now was merged with a bigger bank. And it turned out afterwards that the CEO, especially the last CEOs, had a brilliant team. They were all very well qualified. However, looking at what happened when they all unraveled the whole story of why the bank had to be merged, they found out, well, many people worked with the CEO, especially because they wanted the CEO's job. So on the surface, they were all there, but they said, look, 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 I am just in the waiting position. You're going to fall. The question is not if, the question is just when. I will
Yes.
certainly work with that, and then it's my big time. The question is, how can you prevent this from happening when, let's face it, you are all around very powerful and very influential people where you have no direct disciplinary action, simply tell them to stop doing that?
It's a really, really good question. And so just to be clear, you're asking how does a CEO prevent a climate where people are just there to take that person's job?
Yeah, because
Okay.
also, let's face it, often CEOs said, "Oh, I like the atmosphere of having a bit of competition among staff. You know, the sales team all should meet the best." So you want competition inside the organization. However, where is the fine balance between the reasonably good competition and people just trying to outpace each other on the next promotion?
So yes, I'm not a huge fan of competition on leadership teams. I like the term co-opetition, which
Hmm.
is a term that was
Nice term.
yeah, it was created decades ago by a friend called Sam Malloy. He was a senior executive at IBM. He's unfortunately passed on some years ago, but co-opetition, meaning yes, let's be competitive, let's win, but let's do it together because when my team wins, your team's going to win too. We're all part of the same boat here. We're all in the same ship. I don't think you can prevent, no one's got a crystal ball to say when you hire someone on your team that that person's not going to want to take your job. Often
Mm,
ambitious people do want the top job, and that's okay.
yeah.
It's not a bad thing as long as they don't do it with daggers in your back or trying to shoot you from behind. And that does happen too. I think you have to be careful. I think, look, I've watched a lot of executives over the years, a lot of CEOs over the years, and you have to be politically astute to know who you're allowing into your trust.
Hmm.
Ideally, though, when you've created enough trust on a team, the team itself is going to have a level of mutual accountability. When they see egregious behaviors, when they things becoming too political, they'll balance it out. So they want to be part of a team where there's some level of harmony and safety. Now, again, it's still a minority of teams, but the opportunity is there to do it. And again, it's a climate the CEO needs to create. It's not perfect. There's always danger. There's always going to be people that are out for your job. That's unavoidable. But how do you create the climate to bring trust and openness into the room?
Perfect. I think these are the perfect final words for this episode because in our next episode, we're going to move from climate to the leadership heartset. You probably heard of mindset. The question is, what is heartset? So stay tuned and listen and watch to the next episode. So for this episode, there's only one thing left for me to say. Mark, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Niels. My pleasure.